Hi everyone. I'm sorry that I didn't get the recording to you sooner. I noticed that there were some problems with the original recording and I'd have to re-record. So I'm also a little under the weather. I have a cold. So I'm sorry. This is this is how it's gonna have to be. Okay, so the first stepping stone in becoming a better writer in English is, of course, writing better sentences. So how do we do that? Well, what I'd like you to do is look at some examples of sentences here. They are all wrong. The information is not wrong, the grammar is not wrong. The sentences are just constructed too long and with too many what we call indirect objects or making this a run-on sentence or making them run-on sentences. In English, what you want to do is you want to start with the strongest character in your sentence first, the main character of your sentence should come first. We call this a subject, right? It's okay to have words like secondly and first. Those are sentence modifiers, and they show the reader the order, the chronology, the Reihenfolge of events. But after you have this, first or second, you should have your main character first. So these are some wrong sentences. I'd like you to sit and read them for a moment and see how you could rewrite them or even edit them to be better sentences. We haven't talked about exactly what you can do yet. This is you don't even have to do this. This is just like a self-test. So I would pause the recording here, look at these sentences, and see how you can make them knapp und präzise. So concise is the word, and start with a stronger subject. Okay, since you've paused the recording, and maybe done that, I'd like to use this picture of me in a proud moment as an example to help you remember, as an Eselsbrücke, to help you remember subject, verb, object, word, order. So here's a picture of me in New York City's famous Penn Station, I don't know, 15 years ago. And I'd just like you to think of what's going on in this picture. Andrew is lying on the floor. Andrew is leaning on Shanae's shoulder. Frank is contemplating his existence. Shanae is looking at Andrew pitifully. Wer spielt die Hauptrolle in jedem Satz? That's Andrew, Frank, Shanae. So you see the main character, die Hauptrolle here, it begins the sentence. I don't say according to or on the one hand this. I don't have all this language at the beginning of the sentence. I just have the main character start the sentence. I could say first, Andrew is lying on the floor. Secondly, Andrew is leaning on Shanae's shoulder to give the reader an understanding of the order of events. But I don't have so much information at the beginning of the sentence. So Andrew is the subject. Frank is the subject. Shanae is the subject. You want to get to your subject as soon as possible. In your case, when you're writing, the author is probably going to be the primary subject in your summary, or the most often used subject. Anyway, the subject usually starts the sentence 99.9% of the time. Again, the only thing that comes before the subject, words like first, second, third, furthermore, moreover, in addition, subsequently. So linking words are usually the only thing that come before the subject. Here's an example of a bad sentence. It could be said that with strong examination and reference to your eyes, which are an important perceptive organ, that Andrew is lying on the floor. Okay, I misspelled lying, but these are often the sentences I see in English. It could be said, and so much objective language uh, that I forget what I'm reading. I forget what the point is because the student has written so much objective language to detach themselves from from opinion, that the sentence becomes meaningless and I just don't even know what's the point anymore. Okay, we're going to talk about starting sentences with it in just a minute, and we're going to talk about how German summaries differ from English summaries. But as you can see here, so much language. Before I get to the point, Andrew is lying on the floor. That's all I really need to know. So what makes a good subject in a sentence? A person, a place, or a thing. Yeah, that's always what you want to start your sentence with in a summary. Person, a place, or a thing. Hauptwort, Noun, noun. It is the person, place, or thing performing an action. And a verb always follows the subject. SV, subject verb. Andrew is lying. Okay? Andrew's the subject, verb comes next. You cannot break this. You can't say something like Andrew, comma, according to the author, is lying on the floor. No, right? Andrew is lying. Subject, verb. This concept is unbreakable. A verb is then followed by the object. This concept is likewise as unbreakable. The object is the second person, place, or thing receiving the action. Andrew, subject, is lying, verb, on the floor. Object, subject, verb, object. This concept is unbreakable in English. For example, you wouldn't say Andrew is lying now on the floor. German puts time usually between the verb and the object. You cannot do this in English. Time would go here, or time would go here at the beginning or the end. Now, Andrew is lying on the floor, or Andrew is lying on the floor now. Firstly, Andrew is lying on the floor. According to the author, comma, Andrew is lying on the floor. The author states that actually don't want to go there. That's something different. I think you get what I mean here. An indirect object is anything else, time, place, something that is not receiving the action of the verb directly. It is flexible. Example here, whoops, I'm sorry. Example here, Andrew is lying on the floor at the train station. At the train station, Andrew is lying on the floor. Key thing here, if you start a sentence with an indirect object, with a preposition like at, in, on, you need a comma here. That's why I always recommend putting the indirect object at the end of the sentence. This way, you don't have to worry about comma placement. And it's also better because if you want to start the sentence with a linking word like firstly, comma, Andrew is lying on the train station at the floor. This is a coherent, this is a gut verständlich sentence. But if I say firstly, comma, at the train station, comma, now we're running into problems. Too much information at the beginning of the sentence. So it's always better, in my point of view, to put this at the end of the sentence, the indirect object. Think of the indirect object as the least important information in your sentence. It's just extra information to provide some details, to provide some clarity for the reader, right? But it is the least important information in your sentence. Subject, verb, object, these are the three most important components of your sentence. This is just a picture that I used in when I gave the presentation in person to reinforce this concept. You cannot break subject, verb, object, no matter how much you want to. Let's look at this here. This is an example of a real sentence I got from a student's writing in the past, in which they used poor subject, verb, object, word order. Look, we've been using this color-coded pattern. Look where the object is. Object doesn't belong at the end of the sentence. Verb is too far away from the subject. We have a big indirect object in the middle of the sentence. We have actually so many subject, verb, objects already in this clause here that break the original one. This doesn't work. Maybe when you're reading German, it makes sense to you, but if you take this concept from German and directly transliterate it into English, the English reader is confused and can't remember what you're talking about. All right? So here we have subject, indirect object, verb, object, but we need subject, verb, object. Take a second and rewrite this sentence. You can keep it as one, or you can even divide it into more than one sentence. I don't know why. I've been told by students that in the Matura, they learned that the more complex a sentence is, the better, the more intelligent a sentence is. That's not really the case in English. Okay? Let me give you the acronym, the Abkürzung KISS. Keep it simple, stupid, or keep it short and sweet. Knapp und präzise, concise, succinct. You want to keep a sentence short, but rich with the appropriate information. All right, so I'll give you a moment to pause this and then either try to rewrite the sentence as one or divide it into several sentences. Okay, now before we look at the final product of that previous sentence, keep in mind German sentences are typically much longer, as I just said before. Longer usually means better. German sentences can break the SVO indirect object rule. English sentences cannot. And German sentences use many non-defining clauses. What is a non-defining clause? The author who studies or who teaches at Northwestern University, the author who studied this information in their doctorate program, the who, the which, these are very, very typical non-defining clauses that German speakers like to use. This is a non-defining clause is extra information in the sentence. Okay? And in English, these non-defining clauses are only used when absolutely necessary to clarify, or they are omitted, so weglassen, and then put in another sentence after. Okay, so you don't need so many non-defining clauses with which and who and why and how in one sentence. You can break this into another sentence. You only want to include it if it's a short non-defining clause and it's absolutely necessary. Non-defining means not necessary. Okay, so keep that in mind. Only put a non-defining clause if it really is necessary for the reader to understand the overall point. I'm going to read the sentence right after, so it's okay to put it in another sentence. This is just some German examples, like ja, den Schlüssel hab ich mitgebracht. This is German word order, which is you have object, verb, subject, verb. And if I translated this exactly, the key have brought I with me. This sounds very weird in English, but you guys don't write sentences just like this, but you still break the word order, so it sounds kind of like this to me, right? So please keep in mind, you got to keep the subject, verb, object, word order intact. Here's another example. Andrew, who is 35 and was born in New York City and lived there until he was 24, is a teacher at JKU. Indirect object breaks everything here. Better sentence is Andrew is a teacher at JKU. Punkt. He is 35 and was born in New York, living there, or I can say and lived there until he was 24. Much cleaner sentence. So let's go all the way back to this one. I'm sorry, I forgot that I don't have an example here. So the article discusses the trans woman ban. Punkt. It was written by Joe Johnson and published in Scientific American. Punkt. Additionally, it was published in June 2021. That is fine. 3 sentences. And it might sound weird to you, like to have one sentence just when it was published and where it was published, but it sounds so much better. Or I could say, the article discusses the trans women swimming ban and was written by Joe Johnson in June 2021. Punkt. Now we have one sentence. It was published in Scientific American. Punkt. That is a sentence. It was published in Scientific American. It, subject, was, verb, in Scientific American, object in 2021, indirect object. Okay, it's okay to have short, simple sentences that clarify the information instead of jamming it into all into one sentence. Okay, so to end here, I don't care what you learned in Matura. I don't care what any other Austrian teacher has told you. I am right. I promise you I'm right. All right. I also had a problem with non-defining clauses in my bachelor's thesis. I wrote too many which, who, comma, comma. And my teacher said, listen, you gotta write less complex sentences, even though this is a complex topic. I have to be able to understand this bite-sized information. I have to be able to digest this information. He had a good analogy. He says you have to eat in small bites. You can't just wolf down the entire meal in one go. You're gonna get sick. You're gonna have a stomach ache. Yeah. So digestible chunks of information. More complex, longer does not equal better in English. I'm not talking badly about German. These are different languages, and your language works better this way. Our language can't work better this way. So here are some examples of the original sentences at the beginning. Maybe now with the information you've just learned, you're able to write better sentences. So with the subject subject verb object word order. There are several here that are quite difficult, like on the one hand, and the author states down here. So we'll go over them together. You can pause and see if you can now rewrite the sentences with better subject, verb, object, word order, and then listen to my explanations after you've done it. So I'll give you a second there. Okay, so firstly, you shouldn't use on the one hand and on the other hand in written English. This is good presentation language. What you should say is firstly, and then make another sentence. And when you say on the other hand, you say alternatively, however, or be that as it may. So for example, firstly, they can help with anxiety because these kinds of movies portray unrealistic topics. Punkt. Be that as it may, this can be a funny form of entertainment because of the adrenaline that's kicking through your body when you get scared. Punkt. Better sentence. I broke it into two with two linking words, and I followed good subject, verb, object, word order. Now, I don't have the original piece of writing. They and this are not the best subject because what is they and what is this? We don't know if we don't have the overall context. So they and this are not the best subjects. You should be a little more specific with your subjects, but they is a subject and this is a subject here. So just to repeat, firstly, they can help with anxiety because these kinds of movies portray unrealistic topics, period. Be that as it may, this can be a funny form of entertainment because of the adrenaline that's kicking through your body when you get scared. Now let's look down at these two here because they're also quite difficult. Firstly, the author mentions that these new rules, which ban transgender from sport competition. Okay, we already have a non-defining clause in here. So we need a verb. We need a verb. The author mentions that these new rules, this is one big subject here, right? The author mentions that these new rules. The author mentions, subject verb, that these new rules. Now we have a new subject here, that these new rules, we need a verb. Is which a verb? No. But are is a verb. So it should be, firstly, the author mentions that these new rules are not based on science or facts and only discriminate against this particular group. Boom. Now we can write a new sentence. Additionally, these new rules, or if you want to use something better, besagte, like the German word besagte Regeln, diese besagte Regeln, you can say, additionally, said, S-A-I-D, said new rules ban transgenders from sport competitions. Punkt. So we've already taken that and divided into two sentences that make more sense. Look here at the last one. I had to put an ellipses here, punkt, 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 because the sentence was even longer than this. The student who originally wrote this wrote one paragraph, one sentence. Insanity. Crazy. Too long. So let's look at this. The author states that the biological determinants regarding sex, which, here we go again, throwing in that non-defining clause, we need a verb here. So you could do it one of two ways. Here's the way I think is best. The author states that the biological determinants regarding sex are inseparable from the individual despite transitioning, blah, 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 blah. Whatever is here, punct. Then a new sentence. Said biological determinants are comprised of muscle mass, size, and hormones. Punct. Better sentences. I don't have too much information all at once. Let's look at a simple one up here, which I'm sure you did. No problem. I'm sorry I'm going all out of order, but I wanted to make sure we covered the difficult ones. The author, a graduate of JKU, wrote her thesis in 2020 on the mating patterns of crayfish. Why do I need this information here? Why? It's not, is it super important that I know she's a graduate of JKU? I don't think so, especially for a summary. A summary is not something where I need to know every single detail. But if you want to include it, let's do it this way. The author, verb, subject, verb. The author wrote her thesis in 2020 on the mating patterns of crayfish. My opinion, I still don't think this is great. I think time is always best at the end of the sentence, so it should be the author wrote her thesis on the mating patterns of crayfish in 2020. Punct. She is a graduate of JKU. Punct. And you might say to yourself, she is a graduate of JKU. That's too short. That's too short of a sentence. It's not. It's not a sentence fragment because it has a subject, it has a verb, and it has an object. A sentence only needs these three things. Okay? She, subject, is verb, a graduate of JKU, object. So there you go. That's it for better sentence writing. I understand this might have been a little confusing, a little all over the place, a little rushed. So please come in to the next class with any questions you might have concerning better sentence writing. Moving on to the next part. Paragraph writing. So now that we've learned how to write better sentences, how can we write better paragraphs? Before I get into anything, I can tell you the biggest problem with Germanic speaking people, Austrians, Germans, is their propensity, sie neigen, they tend to auflisten. So they tend to just list information. And I feel like this is something you guys also learn in school to do in English. And we'll find out why this is not a good idea in just a second. So let's get to paragraph writing. So just to remember, key takeaways, not from last week. In the past, I did this week by week. Remember, in English, sentences are shorter. Don't just use just don't do comma, comma, comma. You can use and or because. If you look at a lot of the sentences we're going to see in paragraph writing, it's not comma, more information, comma, more information. You can use things like and or because or therefore, right? Subject, verb, object, word order is unbreakable, and more complex sentences don't mean better sentences. We just talked about this a few seconds ago. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about the presentations. This is an older PowerPoint where I talked about presentations and then talked about this in class. Don't worry about that. Let's just focus on the content of this presentation. Okay, the main thing about an English language summary is not to list the events or details that occur in the article without context. Einfach aufzulisten ist nicht gut, right? So don't just think, okay, let me list the information like a shopping list. We don't want to do that. We need context. Context is key. What is the typical structure of a paragraph in a summary? We have a topic sentence, we have a supporting detail, and then the point that most students miss is we need some evidence. We need some exact facts and figures and specific situations. Usually German students get, or German speaking students get these first two parts correct, but forget number three. Okay, how can we see that in context? So you can read this yourself. I'm not going to say it. You can read it yourself. What does a topic sentence look like? Here's how we start. First, second, third, last. Firstly, secondly, thirdly, lastly. What's the difference between these two? Nothing, really. But if you say firstly, say secondly. If you say first, say second. And here are some good linking words in the middle of your paragraphs. Furthermore, moreover, additionally, in addition, and apart from that. Apart from that is another word to mean außerdem. Please don't say besides. If you really want to say besides, say apart from that. But these mean the same thing too. But never say besides, because besides is more like naja. I don't want to get into an explanation how or why it's more like naja, but don't use it. I don't care what you learned in school. It is not an acceptable form of außerdem. So when you start a paragraph firstly, and then you want to use one of these. Firstly, the author states. Subject, verb. And now we need what does the author state is going to be your object. That's how every topic sentence should begin. And then when you have your second paragraph, you say, secondly, the author mentions. When you have your third body paragraph, you can say, thirdly, the author elaborates that, or lastly, the author elaborates that. Sorry, I was thinking of trying to think of a mistake students make with lastly. Say lastly or finally. Don't say anything else, okay? Lastly or finally when you come to your last body paragraph, your last point that you're going to summarize. What is a topic sentence? It's general enough to expand upon. It's not too general. So here's a good topic sentence. Firstly, the author states that the situation for the unemployed has become increasingly desperate due to the following reasons. It's general enough, but it's specific enough that I know exactly what this paragraph is going to talk about. Firstly, the author states it's hard for the unemployed. That is way too general. The whole article is probably about why it's bad or hard for unemployed people. But you don't want to write this as a topic sentence for one paragraph. You want to get a little more specific. So my tip in your topic sentences is at the end, add something like for the following reasons, due to the following circumstances, or resulting from the following details. Yeah, that's always a great way to end the sentence. Sounds nice, and it shows you're going to give me several reasons. So let's talk about the difference between a German language summary and an English language summary, in my opinion. I've never been a Matura teacher. I only get this impression from student writing and what students have told me. And we have an expression in English, it's like comparing apples and oranges, which means these things are so different. You can't compare them. They're both fruit, right? They're both summaries. They're both fruit, but the taste, the texture, the consistency, everything is very different. So in my opinion, a German language summary is a quick hit and run. It gives the reader the gist. What does a gist mean? Gist is Kerninformation, right? It gives the reader just enough information, and it helps me, the reader, decide if I want to read the article or not. That is the main thing. It doesn't give me really an explanation of the article. It gives me almost all or all of the points from the article. And then I think, should I read it? Yeah, this is enticing, this is interesting, or nah, it's not really for me. And that's what I see from student writing. They say, yeah, the author says this, and the author says this, then the author says that, and without giving me enough evidence or details. In English language summary, let's say there are 10 points in the article. Do you have to cover all 10 points? No, that's insane for a summary. So what you want to do is you want to decide what are the most important points in a summary. Of 10 points, I'm going to pick the 3 or 4 most important parts of the summary, and that's what I'm going to write about. You're going to give me a detailed explanation of these 3 or 4 points. Not incredibly detailed, but more detailed than a German language summary. Okay? And what the point of this is, your summary serves as a replacement for the article. Now I don't have to read the article myself. I've read your summary, and now I don't have to read the article. I know what it's about. And guys, you're all BWL students or Wirtschaftspädagogik or all something with business. And you're probably going to work in an office one day. And the fact of the matter is, when you're in an office in the English-speaking world, and you have someone who is your superior, who works above you, and they need information from you, what they want to do is have you summarize information for them because they've got a million other things to do so that they don't have to do it themselves. Business reports, memos, things like this. The purpose of this is to summarize the main points and go into more detail about the main points and not every single point. Okay? So keep that in mind. Andrew's going to read this. I want to write the 3 or 4 main points and go into detail. So if he reads my summary, he doesn't have to read the article himself. Keep that in mind as you write. Let's talk about the different pieces of the summary. So you're going to have to start with an introduction, correct? So what is an introduction? How does an introduction look in a summary? Every one of your introductory paragraphs should be exactly the same. Okay? Don't get fancy. Don't think I'm tricking you. Don't try to outsmart yourself or outsmart me. Everyone should follow this Vorlage, this Muster, right? So you want to start every sentence, the article X, so whatever the name of the article is, was written by the author and was published on, and then you have the website and the date. That is your first sentence, okay? Every one summary should look like this. The next sentence begins with one of these. Pick one you like. The article deals with unemployment in Austria and its effects on the general population. Punkt. The article discusses the psychology of lying and the difference between lies of omission and lies of commission. The article covers artificial intelligence and its upcoming impact on a variety of fields. That's your next sentence. Let's look at an example of a good introductory paragraph and expand on the information a little bit. The article, now we have the title, You Can Really Accomplish More by Doing Less, was written by F. Diane Barth, author, and was published on Psychology Today on the 4th of November, 2023. The article deals with concepts of productivity. This is the main idea of the whole article. The article deals with concepts of productivity, right? But now, what you guys should do, if you really want to have a perfect summary introduction, throw an end in there and give me the 3 points you're going to cover in each of your body paragraphs. Body paragraphs is like the meat of the summary. So what am I going to see in paragraph 1? Discusses societal views of productivity. Oh, okay, that's paragraph 1. How creativity is actually fueled by downtime. That's the information in paragraph 2. And 3, and trying to do less every day while being mindful of and present in the activities we choose to perform. That's your 3-body paragraph. It's like a roadmap for me. It's like a compass. Now, when you write your summaries, please don't write 1, 2, and 3. I've only put these numbers here so you can see how this flows like a roadmap or a compass. An intro paragraph should be 2 to 3 sentences maximum. You don't want to write too much information in the introduction. All of yours should start this way. As I said before, I'm not tricking you. Some of my students, they seem traumatized that teachers have told them to do something in the past, but they secretly want them to do something else. I don't understand this. Maybe you haven't experienced this, but many students of mine have come to me and said, yeah, my teacher really secretly wanted something else. I'm not tricking you. Please do it this way. I just said the roadmap information. If you notice that there's an Ausnahme here, that there's an exception, here's where I explained it. I'm not going to go into this though. But if you need some if you need some clarification, it's here. And this is just me saying, again, please don't think I'm tricking you. What should supporting details look like? So we have topic sentences, right, in our body paragraphs. What is a supporting detail? Well, if you're looking for information in your article and you want to decide what's the most important point, what are the most important points here, where are supporting details, here are some tips that I can give you. I can't say this is factual, this works for everyone, it's 100% of the time, but this is the best method. Look at the title of the text, and if there are any pictures in the article, usually if there's a picture, the information next to it is quite important. Using the title is what you want to connect the information to. So ideas of productivity is the article from before, right? So if there's a story about how humans lived 1 million years ago or early humans, and it talks about the society and the structure, you probably want to ask yourself, does this have anything to do with productivity, or is it just a story the author is using to kind of get me interested in the topic? If it's just a story and has nothing to do with productivity, you don't need to mention it in a summary about productivity. For example, I'm going to help you here. I'm going to give you a midterm exam about veganism, and I'm going to tell a story about myself at the beginning. You should ask yourself in the midterm exam, is this story important for my summary? Or is it just Andrew trying to give me some information that makes me interested in the topic or helps paint a nice picture of the topic? Do I need it in my summary, though? Keep that question in mind. Always read the first and last sentence several times. So the first sentence of a paragraph and the last sentence of a paragraph, there's usually what we call the bookends of information. So the things that keep the information together, the frame, the Rahmen, that's really important here. Look for linking words like alternatively and however, and other linking words. If you see firstly, in view of the fact, alternatively, be that as it may, if you see these linking words, probably some useful information for your summary. If you see words and phrases that are repeated many times, probably important information. What I like to do and what I learned in school is every time you read a paragraph, summarize the paragraph in one sentence. Then when you're done, look at your one sentence. And if it's an article about productivity and the one sentence that you've summarized doesn't have that much information about productivity or any information about productivity, or on your midterm exam isn't really that important in terms of veganism, then you probably can say, "Ich kann das weglassen." Right? I can get rid of this information. I can omit it. I don't need it. This is the same thing that I just explained. Let's look at a bad paragraph. Real student work. What's the problem here? Firstly, the author discusses habits and how habits are formed. Okay, good topic sentence. She talks about contextual cues and how they help form habits. Oh, okay. Good supporting detail. Now you're starting like a pyramid, right? The smallest information. And now as we get deeper down the pyramid, it's getting bigger and more detailed. Good. So habits and how habits are formed. Now I have a way that habits are formed, but naturally my question to myself is, what is a contextual cue? And why does it help form habits? Does the student do this? Let's see. Then she talked about people changing their dinner habits. In the last part of the first part, she talks about exercising. Okay, how, why is absent here. So anytime you're looking for evidence, ask yourself the questions how and why. Nothing about contextual cues are explained here. The writer is now just talking about different stuff. Maybe dinner habits could be an example, but I don't know. There's no connection to connect contextual cues. There's no explanation of how dinner habits could be a contextual cue. It's just like auflisten here, right? Just new information, not explained with a how or a why. So maybe dinner habits works, or maybe it's better in a new paragraph. I can tell you that exercising could be exercising and dinner habits could work with contextual cues, but I don't know what this is or how it works. And if I don't want to read your article, I just want to read your summary, you need to tell me what this is. Also, this sentence here is not good. In the last part of the first part, it's redundant. Last part, first part doesn't sound very good. Let's look at a good paragraph. Firstly, the author discusses the nature of habits and how they are formed. Meredith Virgil, MSc, explains that habits are formed based on something known as contextual cues. A contextual cue is an environmental aspect in which a habit can occur and one that helps that habit solidify itself. Wow, great. So now I know what a contextual cue is. It's even a better supporting detail. And now I'm going to have an example of how and why this is important. For example, if you starve yourself all day throughout work, you are likely to come home and eat poorly. However, subjects that prepared multiple meals for planned meal times were less likely to come home and binge eat. You could end the sentence here and it would still be a great paragraph, but this student added even more. Whoops, I'm sorry. However, some still ate something upon returning home as the old habit was locked into a contextual cue of arriving home equals having to eat. Sorry, I rushed through that sentence there. In any case, it follows a really good structure. Topic sentence, strong supporting detail, and then evidence of what this supporting detail means. Now, should you write more than one idea in one paragraph? Should you cover more information in one paragraph? I would say one paragraph typically equals 1 point, one idea. That's what you want to say. One paragraph, one idea. Sometimes two if the article is really short, but in your case, the article is not going to be too short. Okay, so typically, let's say you have 3 points that are from 10 points of the article. Now you say these 3 points, each point is going to be one paragraph. Don't put unrelated information and avoid too much info in one paragraph. Okay, in the past, there was a forum task. We don't have this anymore. I changed this from last semester. So when you come back on the 22nd of April, we're going to work on some sentence building, some paragraph building. So there's going to be forum task then, but there's no forum task right now. Okay, now we're going to look at the final part. We've covered summaries and how to build paragraphs for summaries, but what about commentaries? Your commentary has changed from the previous years. So the presentation is going to look a little bit different than what's required of you. I'm going to explain. In the past, students had to write a full commentary, a long commentary, because they were writing on their computers at home. But now, with the advent of ChatGPT, with the creation and use of ChatGPT, we don't do this anymore. You're writing by hand. So now you only have to write 50 to 100 or 150 words of a commentary. So I'm going to explain how to do this, but the slides will be a little bit different. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But before we get into commentaries, I noticed a lot of students have problems with when to use the. They overuse the in the English language because in German you can say der Tod, die Gesellschaft, right? You can say the for any kind of Hauptwort, for any kind of noun. This is not the case in English, and it sounds weird if you overuse the. So let's see how this presentation will pan out. Firstly, we're going to talk about when to use the and when to use of. Then we're going to talk about commentary structure, which is different than this presentation has outlined. And then we're going to talk about the phrases you can use in your commentaries. So firstly, the in English is what we call the definite article. And in English, the definite article is used before a noun, a Hauptwort, where you and I know exactly what we're talking about. For example, the projector in our classroom doesn't work. Students and teacher both know which projector, not which speaker. I always have typos. I'm sorry, guys. As you know, I have ADD, ADHD, so there's always going to be problems with typos. Even if I check 10 times, I tend to overlook it. So übersehen. The projector in our classroom doesn't work. Students and teacher both know which projector. Please don't say Beamer. Beamer is BMW car. We say, oh, I bought a new Beamer. Projector is the word that we use. And this is global English. In the UK, they say Beamer. In Australia, they say Beamer. I almost said Austria. In Australia, they say Beamer. In the USA, they say Beamer for a car. The population in Austria is experiencing growth. Because I say in Austria, we know exactly which population. If I say the population is experiencing growth, what population? So if you want to use the, you need to specify where or which. Here's more. We don't use the when talking about general or abstract nouns. Society. A lot of students say the society has changed. What society? American society? Ancient Roman society? Austrian society? World society? So if you don't tell me which one, you just say society, or you can say our society. You're going to see that in the next slide. Dogs, I don't say the dogs are friendly, right? I just say dogs are friendly. I could say the dogs in Linz are friendly. Now I'm being more specific. Freedom. Freedom is a very abstract idea. Everyone pretty much has a different idea of what freedom means. So I don't say the freedom is being taken away. I say freedom is being taken away, right? Because we're not specifying I could say the freedom of speech in Austria is being taken away. I don't believe this. I'm just saying this as an example. Or our freedom. Our sounds better. Our freedom is being taken away, or our freedom is being granted or given, or our freedom. Yeah, just our freedom. Here are some examples from student writing. The society today is more influenced by social media than prior generations. The young people are hyper aware. I like to eat the apples. The freedom is essential part of creating democracy. The education system, the curiosity. Take a minute, see if you can correct this to make it sound better without the use of the definite article, or adding some more information so you can use the definite article. Right? Here are better examples. Our society today is more influenced by social media than prior generations. I put our instead of the. Young people are hyper aware. I don't say the young people. I like to eat apples, right? If you have Mehrzahl, you typically don't need the. Freedom is an essential part of creating democracy. Our education system, our curiosity sounds, excuse me, so much better. Here's where I've added the instead, right? I like to eat the apples from our tree. You can read through these yourself, right? Of. Lot of people use of incorrectly, but how? I see this so often. The friend of my sister, the boss of my colleague, the Society of Austria, the argument of the author. It's really weird because it's what you're really saying is von dem Leib. Like they birthed it or they created it from their own genetic material, right? So it sounds bizarre when you say things like the argument of the author. Sometimes we use this, but most of the time it sounds weird. We use the dative case. I know a lot of you guys probably are so happy to be out of your German courses, but dative is something that we don't use as often as you do in German. We use what is called genitive, so genitive case, which is just apostrophe S. The friend of my sister's friend, the boss of my colleague's boss, Society of Austria, Austrian society. In this case, we have an Ausnahme, we have an exception. The argument of the author's argument, the position of the expert's position. So much cleaner. Okay, that's really all you have to keep in mind for that. So let's 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 have a look at a commentary overview. We learned about how to write a summary, but what are the key differences between a summary and a commentary? On your midterm and final exam, you're going to write your summary first, and it's going to be approximately, I think, 250 to 450 words. Don't quote me. It's on your Moodle. I just forgot right now because we change it every semester. Um, but your summary is going to be first. It's going to be longer, and then your commentary is going to be somewhere, I think, 50 or 75 to 150 words, and it's much shorter. It's just your opinion in one paragraph, basically. But the most important differences between a summary and a commentary is that a summary has no opinion in it. None. It's just the facts as you see them, what the author says. A commentary is where you give your opinion and you need some different phrases. Now, you guys did last week hiring the right candidate. And I was very impressed by both classes' ability to use the phrases that I gave you and give your opinion about the right candidate. That's really what I was helping you practice is how to give your opinion in a formal way. And you guys did a great job on the forum, right? So if you do the same thing, if you use the same phrases on your commentary, you're going to be just fine. Okay, we can ignore this. Okay, guys, we can ignore the first 3 points more or less. I don't want to say ignore point 3 entirely, but these you can definitely ignore because they do not follow the same structure because you are not writing a full commentary anymore, just 75, 50, 75, 100 words. I don't remember exactly. And you're not writing 3 paragraphs. So we can forget that. Your commentary should still start with a topic sentence. Then you should explain why you agree or disagree, give some supporting examples and evidence or why you agree or disagree. So basically your 75, 100 words, whatever, is going to be this structure here. Firstly, or how could I say this? Yeah, you could say firstly, I agree with the author for the following reasons. Firstly, I agree wholeheartedly for the following reasons. Then you give me a detail and then you give me evidence. Here's the biggest thing that you should remember. Please don't just say, I agree because I agree, and I agree because the author makes good points. And the points are good because you can use them in real life. You're being too vague. You're being too unclear. You're using what is called circular reasoning. And a good example of this, I put it up there as a joke, is if you go to your Moodle, I'm just going to use class 60 as an example, and you scroll down to writing workshop and you click me trying to write a 4-page essay, it's like a funny reel about students just saying, yeah, it's good because it's good and it's bad because it's bad. The fire is hot and it burned people's bodies and they died because of the fire because it was hot, right? We don't want this kind of nonsense arguments. You really have to give your opinion. And I promise you, I'm going to give you a topic where it will be easy to give your opinion. Sorry. So what you want to do is say, firstly, the author makes the argument, blah, 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 blah. I agree for the following reasons, or I agree wholeheartedly, or I'm of the same opinion for the following reasons. First, da da da. Secondly, da da da. Lastly, da da da. And you want to give me some examples. You can take examples from real life. You can take examples from the article. This is not a test of telling the truth. You can lie. It doesn't matter. Just give me some examples. I've even tried to make this easier for you by giving you a commentary skeleton. So the skeleton, this is the body that houses your information. And now you don't even have to write 3 paragraphs. So let's just look at this. This could be your whole commentary right here. Firstly, the author mentions that, and then the argument. I agree wholeheartedly with this idea for the following reasons. And then you give reason 1, and then you give reason 2, and then you could even say one way you disagree. Be that as it may, I disagree with the notion that argument here for the following reasons. And this can be 1 paragraph. If you agree the whole time, then don't even worry. You don't have to say be that as it may. Just want to say this. If you agree and disagree, here's a good phrase for that. I am on the fence concerning the author's argument. That means I can see the one side and the other side. Don't say on the one hand, don't say on the other hand. A good phrase when writing a commentary is I am on the fence. I'll put this on your Moodle, but it's also in here on the slide. These are some other phrases you can use. Listen, in this slide, these are all the sorry. These are all the phrases you need, really. All the phrases you need for a commentary. But if you say, hey, I want to learn more, I wanna improve to the best that I can, then here are even more phrases you can use. But listen, guys, you're in a Kommunikative Fertigkeiten class for 13 weeks. You've got a million other classes to do. I don't think you should overwhelm yourself with too much information. So that's what I like to do. I like to create digestible pieces of information for students. So I would say just look at the ones at on my slide and you have enough. But if you're going forward in Wirtschaftssprache 1 and 2 and interkulturelle and all stuff like this, then these are good phrases to use there as well. All right, listen, this is a lot at once, a lot of information, and I kind of sped through it like it was a speed run style of this information. We are going to practice this before you take your midterm exam, and remember, you have the chance to rewrite your midterm exam. So don't stress about the midterm. More important is the final, and that by the time you write your final exam, you really understand this information. So on the 22nd and the 29th of April, we are going to work on reinforcing and reviewing this information with little practice tasks at the beginning of class. So thanks for listening. I hope this wasn't too difficult to understand with my insane ADHD brain. And yeah, see you on the 22nd.